If you told me nearly a decade and a half ago now that I would come to despise this man and everything he stands for, I would have laughed it off and gone back to my 100th playthrough of Oblivion. Quote, is he perfect? No. Does he call all the shots perfectly? No. Mehelones recounts a couple of times where he disagreed with Howard on key issues, and while he says he felt comfortable bringing them up if he, quote, felt strongly, he does admit that, quote, a lot of people were afraid to say no to Todd, and I think that hurt him. First and foremost, that line about Todd Howard being, a victim of his own success, that comes across more often than not as code for completely out of touch with his fans. And when you factor in the numerous pre-order controversies, as well as the way that the company has handled them, it paints the picture that they simply do not care about their customers and they don't deserve the position in the industry that they hold. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Hard Light Network. And as you can tell, I can hardly contain myself because today is the day we get to bully Todd Howard.
But we know that most of you came here for one thing.
Ultimately, it's not our story, it's the story you create by who you are and the choices you make.
Why did you not optimize this game for PC?
We did. It's running great. You may need to upgrade your PC for this game, but it's got a lot of great stuff going on. Given some of that excitement and press, you're still here.
So as of last week, we're over 200 endings.
It's almost infinitely playable, all of the mods and everything like that. This is a game we need design people will play for a decade at least.
It allows us to have 16 times the detail. I read on the internet that our games have had a few bugs. I did. I read it on the internet, so it's true.
That is not an exaggeration.
And that sometimes it doesn't just work.
The fact that we pulled that off, even today, I cannot tell you how that works.
Who's laughing now?
So after an intro like that, you'd be forgiven for thinking I'm a certified Todd Howard hater, but it didn't get that way overnight, as I was actually a massive Bethesda fanboy back in the day. I've played the Elder Scrolls series since Morrowind. I picked up my first copy of Skyrim on 11/11/11 and the special edition when it released after that. And I even took the day off work to try and get a pack of Nuka-Cola Quantums when they released with Fallout 4. If you told me nearly a decade and a half ago now that I would come to despise this man and everything he stands for, I would have laughed it off and gone back to my 100th playthrough of Oblivion. But things have changed, and I'm here to right past wrongs. The gassing up of Todd Howard has gone too far, and like Moses, I'm here to tear down the false God Howard. But before we get into today's article, guys, do me a solid and hit that like button if you like this video, subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the content that I've got coming up for you guys in the future, and also leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you'd like to support this channel further, there are super thanks and memberships options down below. Feel free to join the channel for exclusive content and perks that you can't get anywhere else. But without any further ado, let's get into today's article. And today's reading comes to us from PC Gamer and is entitled, I think geniuses come up with terrible ideas too. Former senior artist at Bethesda likens Todd Howard's struggle with complete creative control to George Lucas. Quote, if you don't have somebody to help you filter through these things and give you an honest assessment, it actually does hurt you. I think, with the appropriate amount of hindsight, we can all agree that Starfield didn't take off as the multi-year industry titan that Bethesda was hoping it would be. While I, and plenty of other players, got a reasonable amount of enjoyment out of it, it wasn't quite in line with the studio's other heavy hitters. The post-launch support hasn't been interstellar either, and its first DLC, according to our Shattered Space review, hasn't done enough to bring it back to life. There are about a dozen reasons you can cite as to why this was the case, but one that appears to be a reoccurring theme between former developers is the studio, or rather the studio's head honcho, Todd Howard, suffering from success. So saith Dennis Mehelones, a character artist who worked at Bethesda for over 12 years, including work on Starfield itself, during an interview with Kiwi Talks. While the comparison in the headline might not seem flattering at first blush, in the interest of fairness, I want to highlight that Mehelones is, broadly speaking, very positive on his relationship with Todd Howard. I love Todd. I do. He's one of the greatest influences on my life. This man has been a mentor, a guide, he's been patient with me, so a lot of what I am, he's helped shape that. Quote, is he perfect? No. Does he call all the shots perfectly? No. Mejelones recounts a couple of times where he disagreed with Howard on key issues, and while he says he felt comfortable bringing them up if he, quote, felt strongly, he does admit that, quote, a lot of people were afraid to say no to Todd, and I think that hurt him. Here's where the George Lucas comparison comes in. Quote, it's like George Lucas. George Lucas, I think, is a genius. I think geniuses come up with terrible ideas too. They're not going to be hits. But if you don't have somebody to help you filter through these things and give you an honest assessment because they're afraid to tell you what they really think, it actually does hurt you. For context, one often cited reason for why the original Star Wars movies are considered space opera classics, while the prequels are considered, not that, is that Lucas was given more and more direct power over them as time went on. For example, episodes 4 to 6 were extensively edited by his then-wife, Marcia Lucas, who divorced George Lucas after episode 6's release, and had little part in the following films. Mind, George Lucas is sometimes described as stubborn. Just ask, well, George Lucas, who said, quote, I'm a stubborn guy, and I didn't want people to tell me how to make my movies. Whereas Howard, if the developers working under him are to be believed, is more of a victim of circumstance. Back in October of 2023, former lead designer on Skyrim, Bruce Neesmith, said that, quote, he has tried really, really hard to not be the last say guy, but it hasn't worked out that way. That's not something he wants intellectually. I think it ends up being that way because he's somebody who has opinions and whose opinions are valuable. Another interesting parallel here is how Mejelones says, quote, one of the reasons I kind of retired is I was like, I miss Todd. I miss working with him. He's running this big business that grew tremendously. His attention was very scattered. Some of the people who took his place, they're not Todd. It takes a lot to be Todd. Neesmith also mirrored this back in October of 2023, where he stated, quote, when you're running 6 different studios and you've got a dozen projects, although usually only one really big one going on at a time, you know, he's the only one man. He doesn't have the face time to do that anymore. All of this paints the picture of a former auteur designer struggling to adjust to a studio ballooning in size and scope. Not that it's been all bad, mind. Bethesda's Indiana Jones game has been a downright smashing success, with our own Ted Litchfield scoring it at 86 in his Indiana Jones and the Great Circle review. PC gamers Wes Fenlon also chose it for his personal game of the year pick back in December. When it comes to RPGs, though, if Starfield's the future, then it looks like Bethesda has some work to do informing its employees that you can, in fact, disagree with your boss. That's the end of the written article, but I've got a few more things to say before this rant is over. First and foremost, that line about Todd Howard being, a victim of his own success. That comes across more often than not as code for completely out of touch with his fan base. I don't exactly see how Bethesda growing in size is actually an excuse as to why their games have become such trash as of late. It can absolutely be a factor, and I'm sure it's the prime factor, but it's certainly not an excuse, and it doesn't grant them a pass. And I also didn't fail to pick up on the doublespeak utilized by this article. On the one hand, they're saying that the company has simply grown too large for one man to oversee directly, which I could understand, but they also say that Todd Howard's opinions are too valuable and too important for his company's employees to overturn. To tell you the truth, I think it's a both-and situation when there are people like ML Pagliarulo working for Bethesda who seems to go out of his way to insult the fan base when games don't turn out the way that they should. And I've said it once, but I'll say it again, it seems as though Todd Howard has graduated with honors from the Peter Molyneux School of lying to your fans. To tell you the truth, I don't really care if there's a disconnect between Todd Howard's understanding of a game's development cycle versus what the actual final product is. It's his job as both the director of the studio as well as the face of the company to know exactly what content is in a game before he advertises it. And when you factor in the numerous pre-order controversies as well as the way that the company has handled them, it paints the picture that they simply do not care about their customers and they don't deserve the position in the industry that they hold. As a lifelong gamer, I genuinely hope that both Bethesda and the gaming industry as a whole can recover from this downward spiral, and I honestly hope that Fallout 5 and Elder Scrolls 6 turn out well. But regardless of the final states of those games, I will not be purchasing any more Bethesda Game Studios projects because of the damage these men have done to this company's legacy. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much to everybody who has watched up to this point. If you liked the video, leave a like. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the content that I've got coming up for you guys in the future. And also, before you leave, don't forget to take to the comment section down below with your thoughts on Bethesda and Todd Howard. Also, it's a bit of a new ask on the end of my videos, but if you haven't already, please check out my channel and look at some of my backlog, as I've got a lot of videos on there that I put a lot of time and effort into, but the algorithm doesn't always push them to my subscribers. So if you like this content and you want to see more like it, check out some of my older stuff, and also don't forget to come back for more. But as always, thank you guys for watching. If you liked the video, leave a like, and until next time, love you guys, safe travels.
The other kids in the block would say, you know, I'm going to play quarterback for the Cowboys. And I'd be like, I'm going to make video games and everyone's going to play them. Like, you dork. Go back to the chess club. Who's laughing now? Yes, I was in the chess club.